Today, we're diving into the rules that keep UFC fights safe and fair. These prohibited techniques can cause serious injury or unfair advantages, which is why the UFC enforces strict regulations against them. Let's dive into each one, explaining what they are, why they're forbidden, and how they aim to protect fighters and the integrity of the sport. First on our list is headbutting. This move involves using the forehead or crown of the head as a blunt weapon against an opponent's face or body. While it may seem effective, using your head to strike an opponent like a ram, headbutting poses serious risks. It can cause deep cuts, lacerations, and traumatic brain injuries, including concussions. Because of these dangers, headbutting is banned across all regulated MMA competitions, including the UFC. One instance of this came when Piera Rodriguez was disqualified from her UFC Vegas 92 fight against Ariane Carnelossi after delivering multiple headbutts to her opponent. Next, we have eye gouging, a move as unethical as it is dangerous. It involves inserting fingers or thumbs into an opponent's eyes in an attempt to cause damage or temporarily blind them. Eye gouging can lead to permanent blindness, serious facial injuries, or infections. Due to the risks of long-term damage and even blindness, regulators view it as a severe foul. Beyond safety, it's about sportsmanship and maintaining integrity. MMA is a competitive art, and protecting fighters' vision is a core rule imposed everywhere fights are sanctioned. Biting, yes, biting, is an absolute no-go in the UFC. It's obvious why. It's dangerous, unsanitary, and impossible to control once initiated. Not only does biting risk severe injuries and infections, but it's also disgusting. During heated exchanges, some frustrated fighters have been tempted to bite their opponents. The most notorious of these occurrences came from boxing when Mike Tyson famously bit off a piece of Evander Holyfield's ear. As for the UFC, Igor Servino was disqualified and subsequently released from the UFC after biting Andre Lima during a fight. Hair pulling might seem minor, but it's a sneaky tactic that can cause serious discomfort and unfair control. Grabbing an opponent's hair can yank them off balance, disrupt their movement, or escape a submission attempt. It's a cheap trick that encourages fighters to resort to underhanded tactics instead of pure skill. Fighters are expected to rely on technique, not cheap and dirty tactics like this, once again trying to maintain the honor amongst fighters. Protecting fighters from this is essential in a sport built on skill, respect, and fairness. Fish hooking involves inserting a finger into an opponent's mouth and pulling on the flesh or cheeks. The move can cause tearing, cuts, or severe facial injuries, and it's a serious health risk due to potential infection or nerve damage. Plus, it's extremely painful and can easily damage delicate facial tissues. The UFC views this maneuver as a cheap and desperate attack that has no place in a professional fight. A groin attack is exactly what it sounds like. Any strike or grab to an opponent's groin area, it's considered one of the most painful and disruptive foul moves in MMA. Even with protective cups, strikes to this sensitive area can cause severe pain, temporary incapacitation, and in some cases long-term injury. Not to mention, this is arguably the cheapest move in all of fighting. Fighters who intentionally attempt to target this region are not tolerated. Fairness aside, this is about protecting fighters and possible their next generation. Small joint manipulation refers to twisting or bending fingers, toes, or other small joints to cause pain or injury. While it might seem minor compared to strikes, these actions can quickly lead to broken fingers and dislocated joints, potentially causing irreparable damage. Because of how vulnerable these joints are and fighters' reliance on their hands for striking and grappling, these painful, unsafe tactics that could ruin careers. Striking the back of the head or spinal cord area is one of the most dangerous fouls in all of combat sports. These regions are significantly vulnerable to severe injury, including paralysis or even death in extreme cases. Because of this, fighters found guilty of this foul can face disqualification, fines, and suspensions. Protecting these sensitive areas maintains the sport's integrity while ensuring fighters can compete without risking catastrophic injuries from dangerous strikes. This prohibition is about long-term safety over short-term advantage. Kicking or kneeling a grounded opponent's head is banned because of the tremendous risk of brain injury. When an opponent is on the ground, they are more vulnerable, especially if their head is low or tucked in. Strikes from the knee or foot to a grounded head can cause severe brain trauma or spinal injuries. While fighters are still allowed to strike from a standing position, there are significant consequences if a fighter were to kick or knee a grounded opponent. One example of this came at UFC 259, when Petr Yan threw an illegal knee to Aljamain Sterling's head while Sterling had a knee on the ground, making him a grounded opponent. Sterling was unable to continue and Yan was disqualified. Similarly, stomping on a grounded opponent or using your foot to stomp on their body while they're on the ground is strictly illegal. This move can cause serious injuries, particularly to vulnerable areas like the head, ribs, or limbs. Many injuries from stomping can be career-ending or life-altering because it offers a dangerous and somewhat unfair advantage. Since the opponent can't defend effectively, the UFC prohibits it completely. Elbows thrown in a vertical 12-6 direction, imagine clock hands moving straight down, are banned in the UFC. This rule originated long ago due to concerns about the sheer severity of such strikes, which can cause deep cuts and severe facial injuries. Although fighters may still throw elbows in other angles, the specific 12-6 motion is prohibited to prevent unnecessarily brutal facial damage. This particular ban is a reminder that the UFC, while permitting intensity, still places limits on what techniques are acceptable to avoid unnecessary injuries. Throat strikes are banned because they can actually collapse an opponent's airway or cause severe nerve damage. Even accidental contact can be potentially fatal. While some submission holds permit fighters to apply pressure on the neck area using various limbs, any form of strike or grip aimed at the neck or windpipe are strictly prohibited. Clawing, pinching, or twisting an opponent's flesh like an animal may not sound so bad, but it's a serious foul in the UFC. These tactics involve any gripping, grabbing, and manipulating the skin or flesh to cause pain and discomfort. As these are not deemed moves involving any level of professionally acquired skill, an intentional effort to apply these are not tolerated. Fighters grabbing the cage or fence during a bout might seem like a quick way to avoid takedowns, but it's illegal. This move gives an unfair advantage by helping fighters escape takedowns or control their positions, disrupting the flow of the fight. Allowing this to go unchecked would encourage tactics that undermine an opponent's skill. Fighters caught holding onto the cage are usually warned, depending on the timing, hit position, and how much benefit it created the fighter who did it. However, this can also result in the point deductions or even disqualification. One foul that may seem obvious to most: intentionally throwing or pushing an opponent out of the octagon. This dangerous move could lead to severe injuries if fighters land awkwardly outside the cage. While this hasn't actually occurred in the UFC, the rule was put in place after Tank Abbott attempted to throw Cal Worsham out of the cage. Following that fight, the UFC stepped in to strictly prohibit this tactic, which will result in immediate disqualification. Pile driving involves driving an opponent's head or neck into the mat with excessive force. This move is banned because of the high risk of catastrophic injuries, such as neck fractures or paralysis. With a goal of balancing intense competition and aggression with fighter safety, this is another move that's banned because it's high probability of ending with lifelong consequences. So while this next move won't result in physical detriment to an opponent, grabbing an opponent's shorts, gloves, or clothing to gain an advantage is strictly illegal. Because this tactic might help fighters control or manipulate their opponent, it's considered unfair and unsportsmanlike. Cheap maneuvers to gain advantage over another fighter also undermine the skill-based nature of MMA. While not carrying quite as severe consequences, fighters caught grabbing can be subjected to penalties like point deductions or even disqualification, not to mention getting a reputation for being lame amongst the ranks of the UFC universe. Next up is a bit of a catch-all for everything not covered in the ban of other specific maneuvers and tactics. Unsportsmanlike conduct includes actions like spitting, egregious taunting, or language deemed excessively abusive towards other fighters, referees, or even fans. While there are examples of fighters making some frowned-upon gestures without consequence, there are limits to how far a fighter is permitted to go. Referees closely monitor behavior and can issue warnings, point deductions, or even disqualifications for crossing the line. In the heat of battle, emotions can run high, but fighters and their teams are expected to maintain professionalism. With that, it's not only fighters that are held to the rules of the octagon. Corner interference, such as giving illegal instructions, distracting the referee, or physically interfering during a fight, is explicitly banned. The UFC enforces strict penalties for such actions, in most cases resulting in disqualification and suspension. An in-depth look at some of the most dangerous, unethical, illegal, and downright cheap moves in the UFC. Thanks for watching. Hit us with a like and subscribe, and join us as we unpack more.